I have full autonomy in my life. And with that comes full responsibility for where I end up. And then the last thing I'd say is just this deep feeling of I'm going to do whatever it takes to change all of this, to reset the standard and to create quality of life for me, my future family, and happiness, and resolve trauma, and really just go out and win and enjoy success and quality of life and create impact and live a life of purpose. And that, I don't know exactly where that came from. That poster was a big part of it, but I really want to pinpoint that because I want to be able to teach my 4 children to have that as well. That internal drive has really been huge in my life in the decision making and helping me to get to where I have today.
All right, fellas, Dave Allred is with me today. And man, we've been talking about this show for a long time. And this is going to be a lot of fun because the subject matter that we're going to cover today is topics that I know you guys are passionate about. And we'll talk about many things, but family and finances are going to be at the core of our conversation today. And my guest has built a financial empire, and he's done it in such a way that he's involved his family and he's impacting other families. And that is why I'm so excited to get into the story of Dave Allred and a little bit about his business and his family and how he approaches finances and family. So Dave is from Provo, Utah. He's got 4 kids, ages 9 to 17. He's been married for 19 years, and he's been a member of the Front Row Dad community since 2021. Shout out to Justin Donald for introducing us, and maybe even Jon Vroman too, I think, right? Was Jon Vroman, you were at an event with him, and I feel like that was a connection. I feel like I remember actually standing in Jon Vroman's driveway talking to you. That's it. I may be loose on the details. Do I have that right? Do you remember this?
No, yeah, you're right. First of all, grateful to be here, man. Thanks for having me. It's long overdue. Been excited about this podcast for a long time. But yeah, I was at a 100 million mastermind, with 100 other people that paid $100,000 to be in the room, and Eric Van Horn, and I got introduced to Eric, to Justin Donald, and then to Jon Vroman, and I heard about Jon Vroman, and I literally messed up Jon Vroman and Jon Vroman, and I texted the wrong people later on trying to figure out who was who. But hey, we made it, and we're here.
Dude, so great, man. I love it when people find Front Row Dads because they're like, "Hey, 5 of my friends told me that we should connect." That's always the best intro. As I learn about your life, Dave, I know that your story is rich in depth and triumph over struggle. There's so much there. Some things that you guys might read if you went, which you should, look at Dave's website and read his bio. By the way, if you ever want to see a banging bio that's just done, written so well with the story and the heart and the soul, you've got to go read his full bio. But you'll see things like he ran away at 17, grew up in poverty. He ended up taking a mission trip to Peru, survived an earthquake, returned to the States. There's door-to-door sales involved, and ultimately becoming a millionaire by 26. And I'm just scratching the surface of all the cool backstory that you'll read there, some of which we will likely get into today. But where Dave's real estate investing began about 15 years ago, he has grown his portfolio into something so impressive. And the numbers are not just what's impressive about Dave. It's when you start hearing about why he does this and how he's helping other people along the way. That's where you fall in love with who he is, and we'll get to that in just a second. So ultimately being passionate about helping people get financial freedom. So we're going to meander in lots of places, but Dave, thanks for making time, buddy.
Let's go. Excited, man.
Let's back up in your story because we teased it a little bit, but tell us in your words, man, where you came from. What was life like growing up? And also I know there's a story of a poster involved here that I want to make sure that we get to. So tell us a little bit about the backstory for Dave.
You bet. So I grew up in a small town, Manti, Utah, in a very low income, blue collar home. I would say unfortunately kind of a dysfunctional, kind of a broken home. My parents, they got separated 3 different times for about a year at a time. And they'd always come back together, to try to make it work for the kids. And in hindsight, I think it'd probably been better if they would have just, went their separate ways. But they had good intentions and pure intentions to try to make it work for the family, but just a lot of arguing and fighting, and a lot of fighting about money, honestly. And in fact, that's been a big motivator for me to become financially independent and have the success in the financial world, is because I didn't want to have to deal with that in my own family. I think this has been a huge motivator for me personally. But just a lot of arguing all the time. And, my older sister ran away when she was 15. I remember helping her move her stuff out of the window of her bedroom, and I was crying, and, her friend was there to pick her up. And then she, I didn't see her anymore in my life for years. Fast forward 2 years later, I was 17, and I ran away from home. Didn't know where I was going to go. I actually ran away, and I ended up sleeping in a diesel truck that somebody didn't lock. And in the back of the cab, they have like a couch back, like a little bed back there. And so I slept in some random diesel truck in the back seat, that night. Anyway, I ended up finding a friend who kind of let me stay on his couch for a little while, and then I rented out a really, really shitty little house. The roof was falling in. There's cockroaches. It was a mess. Like, there's no way to be up to code as a livable space. And my little brother, he became emancipated when he was 17. Moved in with me as well. So just the two of us, just trying to make it work. Living off of ramen noodles and fast food, and working graveyard shifts, making minimum wage, and actually we were manufacturing fiberglass flagpoles. That was my career choice at the time, if you can call it that. And so yeah, just grinding, man.
Dave, let me ask you a real quick question here. What did that feel like, man? What were the emotions that you remember to this day when you were sleeping in the back of that truck, and when you're in these less than ideal living conditions? What did that feel like, man? Were you sad? Were you depressed? Were you just fighting? And were you on? What was going on in your heart?
It's a great question. I would say the first thing that comes to mind is, as a teenager, you got so many emotions going on, right? And trying to figure out life and purpose and where you want to go. I would say it was mainly, a lot of kind of resentment at the time, and anger and frustration. Because I didn't feel like it was fair, or maybe that I deserved, to be in that position. It's probably kind of, honestly, probably kind of a victim mindset. Like, hey, like I don't deserve this. Like, I shouldn't be in this situation to begin with. This is, blaming my parents for a lot of it, which a lot of it, probably was, but it's also, I wasn't the perfect kid, so I got to take some responsibility in that as well. So that was probably the primary emotion, but the second one was a sense of independence. And it was, hey, you know what? I'm my own man, and I'm gonna fix this. I'm gonna do whatever it takes. I'm gonna conquer this. I'm better than this. And so I wouldn't say it was freedom, a sense of freedom, because I definitely didn't have any freedom. I had very little freedom, but it was a sense of independence, and that was invigorating and really empowering me to be like, okay, I'm on my own journey now, and I have full autonomy in my life. And with that comes full responsibility for where I end up. And then the last thing I'd say is just this deep feeling of, I'm going to do whatever it takes to change all of this, to reset the standard, and to create quality of life for me, my future family, and happiness, and resolve trauma, and really just go out and win and enjoy success and quality of life, and create impact and live a life of purpose. And that, I don't know exactly where that came from. That poster was a big part of it, but because I really want to pinpoint that, because I want to be able to teach my 4 children to have that as well. But that internal drive has really been huge in my life, in the decision making, and helping me to get to where I have today.
Do you think that people are born with that? Do you think people cultivate that through suffering? Do you think or is it just a little bit of all of it, which is where I tend to lead? It's like yes to all.
Yeah, great question, man. I saw a little YouTube video actually maybe 2 weeks ago, and they articulated it very well, but it was basically saying that, hey, if you've had, some trauma or some real challenges in your youth, but not like really, really crazy trauma where you end up with a lot of, coping mechanisms and dependencies in your life, but just a pretty heavy amount of it, but nothing like crazy. those are actually some of the most successful people because as adults, because they've got to go and prove something, right? They've got, and they've got that grit and that character and that tenacity of having gone through adversity, and psychologically they have something to go and prove, and so anyway, that was interesting to hear that. I think that you can't necessarily teach it. I think it's more just a matter of your environment as you grow up, and also just your ambitions that are instilled. And it's interesting because like I have a lot of friends and even family members where I really want to see them win. I want to distill some of those things, that ambition, right? But what I've learned is that you can't help other people more than they want to help themselves. You can't want it more for them than they want it themselves.
Yeah. Take us back to where I interrupted your story. Thank you for letting me do that. And take us forward a little bit, a few years, because I think there's a big gap there between moving out at 17 and 26 when you became a millionaire. So fill in some of the bigger blocks there.
Yeah. So we talked about that poster, right? So when I was a teenager, I had these posters in my bedroom, and I had 3 or 4 of them, and one was a Lamborghini, teenage, boy. And then the second one was a Pamela Anderson, I think it was Baywatch, if you remember, Baywatch. And then I think I also had one of Cindy Crawford, with a little mole on her lip. You can't. Anyway, great posters, by the way. I think my wife would probably not approve if those were in my office today, but
yeah, that's right. You've grown.
Yeah. The fourth one was my favorite athlete, Jerry Rice, and had a big picture of him, catching football. In the bottom, it had his quote, and that quote's been very meaningful for me in my life. And it's that, I will do today what others won't, so that tomorrow I can have the life that others can't. And that simple quote really kind of summarizes the next few years, maybe the next decade of my life. So again, I will do today what others won't, so that I can have the life that others can't. And so, that really instilled in me. So fast forward, I'm at college. There's a recruiting booth set up to go out and sell home security systems, door-to-door sales. And, anyway, long story, I jumped into it, and I knew it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be challenging. It was definitely not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be get my MBA and be a businessman or a professional firefighter. Those were my two, my career trajectory. And ended up going out to Chicago, knocking doors, and it was the hardest thing I ever did, man. It was so, let me back up a little bit. College, then I had an opportunity to go out and serve a 2-year mission in Peru with the church, and that was an extremely challenging thing as well. I mean, I showed up there not knowing how to speak Spanish very well, and I thought it was going to be Mexican food for some reason, and there's no Mexican food in Peru. It's actually not. There's no tortillas, tacos, burritos, any of that stuff. And so it's just, and then there's a huge learning curve, and the climate, and got sick so many times, and there's we could do a whole podcast on stories just from that 2 years. Earthquake, 8.1 magnitude, and but I was able to serve in a leadership position out there, and I learned a lot about just life and a lot of soft skills. Came back, recruited into.
Dave, hold on one sec. I want to make a point on something here, because I know a little bit about this story, and I think this is really encouraging for parents to know. You actually didn't want to do this mission trip. You weren't going to go. This was a no for you. And then fairly quickly, it sounds like, if I know the story well, like you're going to go, which kind of was a shock to everybody. Did I get that right? Do I understand that story?
No, that's exactly right. It was a huge shock. And in fact, when I decided to go, I didn't even tell my parents, because I didn't want them to get like the fulfillment of that.
But here's why this is so important, man, is like sometimes you, like as a parent, what'll happen is it just changes. Like you go, I'm really worried. And then all of a sudden, it seems like you didn't do anything differently, but your child just changes their mind. They just shift. And I think that as a parent, sometimes it's important, if you're going through a dark season or it feels like that to you, and you now, as we maybe reframe the dark season into a important season, a season of growth, right? Where you had to make that decision on your own, per se. That's hard for a parent to do, to sometimes let go and let you become who you need to be and go through your process on your timeline.
Exactly right. And for me, it was actually more like a logical thing. I saw a lot of my friends and the trajectory of their lives with, they're pregnant girlfriend's getting pregnant and addicted to pain pills and just like a lot of things that weren't really healthy and where I wanted to get to in my life. And then I saw some of these guys coming back from this 2-year service mission in a much more mature place in their lives. And so it's actually more of a logical, hey, I can continue this trajectory, or I can go into something really hard and challenging that I don't really want to do, but I'm going to come back, as a better person from that. And so that's what drove my decision making. And I think a lot of times in my life I look at maybe a not superpower, but something that's benefited me a lot is really embracing delayed gratification. And I call it the law of the harvest, right? Where you don't really get to see the reward immediately. There's no immediate, instant gratification, that dopamine hit. It's going to be really hard, but at the end of it, it's going to be worth the price we paid for it. And that's been across the board, man. In door-to-door sales, in my leadership career, even in my real estate fund, Axia Partners, some of the best deals we find are the ones that have they're hard, they're challenging, they're kind of scary, and other people don't want to do it because it's hard, right? But those have the greatest upside and the greatest profitability a lot of times.
All right, so you start knocking on some doors after Peru turns into something special. You're basically selling, but then you become a sales manager. I love part of the story where you're fairly young. Early on, you made 30 grand. Thought that you were balling at 30. Bought a car, right? But then you made 100 grand, broke the ceiling. Then you made 200 grand. Then you made 500 grand, right? And I love where the story. One of the things I think is really important about this story, as I know it, is that you found mentorship. So you were making this money, but you were disciplined with it. You were hungry. You were learning. Can you take us to that part of the story where you started asking for help and you started making some good investments? And that's really what propelled you into the level of wealth that you're playing with today.
Yep, you got it. So that first summer, the mission was really hard. Then that next summer was actually it was the hardest thing I'd done at that point in my life. So much failure, 8% of the team quit. I thought about quitting every day, multiple times per day, but I stuck through with it, finished really strong, made $31,000, which for me was really the most important money I've ever made in my life, even today, because it's more than my parents had ever made. And it was enough of a win to come back the next year as a sales manager. And I was just so proud of myself for not quitting like most of the guys did that year. And, it led into a 15-year leadership career, managing 121 sales teams in 41 states, and an incredible financial opportunity. But it's crazy looking back. Like if I would have quit, tucked my tail between my legs like most of the guys did and not had that grit or that understood the delayed gratification and really embraced doing hard things, it would have changed the whole trajectory of my life, like where I am today. And so, I'm really trying to teach my kids right now. We have the Allred family 10 guiding principles in every one of our kids' bedrooms on the wall. And number 2 on there is Allreds don't quit, right? So I'm just really trying to teach that. And it's fun to be able to say that all the time to my kids. Like if my son has a hard time at basketball practice or whatever, like, hey, rule number 2, Allreds don't quit. And now my 8-year-old, 9-year-old, anytime I even talk about something being hard or quitting, she's like, Dad, Allreds don't quit. And it's the cutest thing, man. Like so proud of her for saying that, understanding that concept. So anyway, that first year, and then the next year came back, made $156,000 as a top first year sales manager. And that was incredibly important to me because I would have said, hey, if I did everything in my life right, maybe making $100,000, like best case scenario, right? And to be able to kind of blow through that, it really just removed a lot of those limiting belief systems. And so that year, after that summer, I went to my CPA. I'm like, hey, what can I do to mitigate my tax liability? And what are all of your wealthy clients doing? Because I felt like I was wealthy, right, with my earnings. And he said they're investing in businesses or in real estate. And I was like, hey, real estate sounds cool. I'd love to learn more about that. And so I just committed to becoming a student of the game of real estate and committed to being very coachable. And so I just started trying to get proximity to people that were already doing what I wanted to be doing. And I really believe in the power of proximity. Like it's one thing to read a book, but to be able to be with somebody else doing what you want to be doing and see the whites of their eyes and see, you're like, hey, if this guy can do it, I can do this. And so I'm grateful for having some guys in my circle that were doing big apartment complexes and big things in real estate. And so, and it took, it was a long learning curve. and I won't go into details too much on that one, but bought a few townhomes, and then some fourplexes, and then a 20plex, and then 127 units, and then 237 units, and then just started building this portfolio. And the reason why I really loved real estate was, well, I don't love paying taxes. That was definitely part of it. But ultimately, my core motivator, John, is freedom. I want to have a ton of freedom in my life to be doing what I want to do, when I want to do, with people I want to be doing it with. And that drive for freedom is really been, again, a core motivator for me. And I'm grateful for realizing that early in my professional career, because I've been able to make a lot of my decisions now around how can I just create more of this freedom. And initially it was financial freedom. Like, I just want to have enough passive recurring income to pay for my family's cost of living. And then it switched more so to time freedom, which is even more important, right? To be able to actually own your time. And from there it went to lifestyle freedom. How do I create and curate the ideal dream lifestyle for myself and my family, those that I care about?
Yeah. I know you love experiences, and whenever I see pictures of you or videos of you and your family, dude, you're doing the coolest things. You're traveling, you're surfing, you're adventuring. It's just awesome to see, because I love the business success that you've created. That's wonderful. But dude, to see you buy back your time, to see you prioritize your family, nothing impresses me more. Tell me a little bit about either a past experience, recent experience that you were thrilled with, or one that you're looking forward to.
One of my favorite mottos in life is and, not or. So I'm going to try to take advantage of that real quick here. My most recent one was, we just got back from Maui last week. Spent 8 days out there surfing, turtles, volcanoes, rode to Hana. Just incredible experience with the kids, and really just spending that quality time, trying to be very present with them. And I actually used to manage the Hawaii Islands for the home security company previously, so it's fun to go back there 8 years later and go do the same thing, same experiences. And the little kids didn't remember it very well. My older two girls actually remembered a lot of those same experiences, so that was really special. Looking forward, I'm going running with the bulls in Spain next week for 5 days, and then my family's flying out and meeting me out there, and we'll be in Spain, then going down to Italy, and then over to Paris for a few days. And that's part of, one of my commitments to my kids has been, hey, once you turn 15, you can choose anywhere you want to go in the world, and I'll pay for a week-long experience, and you get to choose. But you have to do your homework, figure out where you want to go, why you want to go there, the language, the little bakeries, the experiences you want to have. And I think that's a great way to be able to teach your children to be more open-minded and to understand culture and diversity, and to be a lot more open-minded. And so that's a tradition that I'm really excited about implementing in my family. And my daughter, she chose Paris. And so I added on Italy because I think it's going to be awesome to go to Rome and the Colosseum and everything with the kiddos. So those are the two things that I'm really excited about right now.
Dude, did I tell you what we're doing this summer?
No.
So we leave shortly to go to Iceland for 3 days, then to Nice for about 5 days with a couple other Front Row Dad families, and then up to Amsterdam for a few days, then meeting up with my parents, my sister, my niece, taking a cruise down through, I think it's Germany and France, I believe, landing in Basel, if it's pronounced that way, Switzerland, and then we're going to do a few days in Switzerland hiking, and then back home. So, dude,
you just went up to me big time, bro.
You're inspiring me, man, and I wanted to share that with you because seeing, and this is true, and everybody knows this if they've been listening to the show since the beginning, is that I started the group that I needed, not the one that I had all the answers and wanted to tell dads how to do everything. And honestly, over the last 7 years, watching guys like you do these epic trips with their families and prioritize that time, that's what led to this. It's ultimately, I became a product of the community of watching people do this repeatedly. Tim Nikolai, who does this with his family every year. And he really set the bar at a place where I'm like, I could do that. If I prioritize this, if I plan well, if I think far enough in advance, we can make these adventures happen. So
I love that, man. I think that at the end of the day, we're never going to regret having prioritized family and spending time with them. But it really is hard because I run, all these different businesses, and, we help bring, my partners and I brought Top Golf into Utah run a real estate fund, have a lot of irons in the fire. And I get the question all the time, okay, how do you manage all of that, but then also prioritize time with your family? And I just want to share this because I've thought about this so much. And life coaches, real estate strategy coaches, I've gotten so much input on this. And so I do feel like the price of greatness is imbalance. Like you've got to have, sometimes we go all in on a new venture, a new project, a new podcast, a new business venture, but then and so there's going to be an imbalance maybe with your kids, your family, your relationships, your health, your nutrition, a lot of those things. But the key to me is, understanding there's seasonality to that. And sometimes it can be really intense, but you've got to make up for that later, right? And so more like on an annual basis, I want to have real balance between 10 different areas of my life. But at any given point, every week or month or every day, it's definitely not a perfect balance there by any means. And part of that came from, I created this system back when I was 3 years old. I call it lifestyle design. And I wrote down the 10 areas of my life I want to be great at, right? So it's my health, my family, my time, business, finances, experiences, personal growth, relationships, memories, spiritual. And so I wrote down exactly what I want each one of those buckets, those categories. And that's been really, really, really powerful for me because it gives me intentionality. It gives me purpose where I can go and be a lot more bold in my approach because I know exactly what I really define as a life well lived with purpose, impact, and with no regrets. And I think, and by the way, it's not an easy thing to figure out. This took a long time, man. And it's a living, evolving document right now. I call it lifestyle design. But it's been so impactful, man, because I hear something from a conference, a mastermind, an audiobook with you, Jon, one of our front row dads events come back, and I'll implement into my lifestyle design. But having that written blueprint's been really, really powerful for me. And by the way, if any of your listeners would like to get a copy of that, I've got a template, a free downloadable template of my lifestyle design on my website. It's just daveallred.com. Should be pretty easy to find, but happy to share that with you guys. For me, it's been really powerful. But that intentionality and that is giving me the ability to go out and do and still prioritize my family, right? Which at the end of the day, I know I will never regret the moments, the time that I've been able to spend with my family. But at the same time, you also want to go win a business, right? And go win other things so you can have the fuel and the access to be able to go out and have that quality of life that we all really want. And also be an example to your children of being a producer and a leader and somebody that's actually making an impact in the world.
And didn't you convert that lifestyle design template into a kids edition?
I did. Yeah. Hey, thanks for bringing that up. So this, it's been so powerful for me in my own life. I decided early this year that I wanted to create that for my kids as well. And so I created a watered down version of it. It's a little more simple, and I call it Youth Lifestyle Design. It's also on my website if you want to download that and use your children. And so I spent probably 100 hours with my kiddos and went through those same 10 areas of life. And all my kids now have a written down blueprint of what they envision as the best version of themselves in their life. And guys, especially for the dads listening here, to me, I worry a lot. I don't worry about much in my life, but I worry about, my 3 beautiful girls dating and like where they end up in life and, college and, once they leave our stewardship and living with us and they're in college. And that's probably one of the only things that really kind of stresses me out still. And so for me to be able to spend time with them and help them envision the best version of themselves and how they want to show up in these 10 categories, I think that's like one of the best things you can do as a dad because, I'm not going to be able to micromanage them later on or anything. And so to me, that's been, anyway, it was a really fun practice to sit down with them and see kind of who they are at their core and what they really want to go and achieve in their lives.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Speaking of supporting your kids, creating frameworks that might evoke certain values, you've got a great story around how your daughter bought her first car, which was a Tesla at 16. And I'd love for you to tell that story. And also, at the risk of over speaking it before you tell the story, there's something I've heard you say, which is that in your family, you strongly believe nothing is given, everything is earned. So connect the dots between that thought, that belief, that statement, and what happened with your daughter and how she acquired that car.
You bet. So I think that I'll start off by saying, it's really unfortunate nowadays that, the public school systems and whatnot, there's no real education around personal finances. And, it's a travesty, honestly. And I think, in my opinion, it's by design because, what financial freedom does is it creates free agency, right? We're not relying upon Big Brother or anybody else for our own well-being and our own happiness. And so one of my commitments is to, really teach my children about how business and how money works. And for the record, it's not just about money, because money's just a tool. In my opinion, money is literally just a facilitator for good or bad, right? It magnifies whoever we are and what's important to us. And so I just want my children to understand that. In our household growing up, there's never a conversation around money, finances, business, real estate, investing, compounded interest, taxes, any of that stuff. And that's totally fine, because I just think that wasn't something that maybe my parents felt confident to be able to teach on, right? But I want to be able to teach my children those principles. And so, if any of my kids walked in right now, even my youngest, and I said, hey, what's the best type of income? They would all say, passive income. Like, talk about it all the time. And all four of my children are kind of competitive about who's got the most passive income, who has more rental properties, and who's going to get their first, fourplex. And it's really, really fun, man, honestly, to be able to kind of bring them into my world. And so my oldest, when she was 14, without me even asking, she went and got a job. And then when she was 15, she was the first employee at one of my restaurants, an Everbowl acai restaurant. And she's worked really hard. And along the way, she was investing in cryptocurrency and some stocks that she really liked, and being really smart with her money. And then when she's 15 and a half years old, she came to me and she's like, hey, Dad, I'm almost 16. I really want to get a Tesla. I'm like, no, we're not going to get a Tesla. That's just completely irresponsible. There's not a chance in hell we're going to do that. And she's pretty relentless, though. And I try to teach my children salesmanship. I think it's a very valuable skill set. But, John, it's a two-edged sword, man, because,
Dude, totally.
when you teach your kids that no means yes, it's just like, and to never quit and to never give up and to be relentless in what you want in your life, right? It really does, man. I can backfire pretty fast. Like, I'm not a pet person. But now we have a dog, and we've had a few cats, and we have a Tesla in the garage, right? And so it really is two-edged sword. But so with my daughter, I kept saying no, and then I realized, hey, the higher quality answer is you can have anything you want in your life, as long as the smart answer, or smart question is, how can I create enough passive income to be able to pay for this depreciating asset or this luxury item that I want in my life? And so I framed it that way. I said, hey, how can you create enough passive income to be able to, pay for a, $350 a month car payment? And so I went to the whiteboard and started thinking about it. Ended up liquidating some of her cryptocurrency and some of those stock holdings. And she took that capital and she JV'd, or joint ventured, with me on a duplex. And that creates, almost $300 a month in passive income for her. And then the difference is, hey, your mom's always Ubering you guys around to, practices and sports and recitals. So, I'll pay you your salary per hour to help your mom out. And so now she's making, about $400 a month. And so she's able to pay for this car payment. It's a win-win, because now she's helping mom, shuffle the kids around. And but then she's protected that nest egg of that principles, invested in real estate, it's appreciating, and then the cash flow is just paying for the lifestyle that she wants to have. And so I am proud of that. It's just one example of a lot of the ways we try to structure things. But again, the main idea there, though, is to teach your children, set them up to have success and go win later on in their lives. And so anyway, that's a fun example of that. So thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, I absolutely love it, because a couple things. One, I really appreciate the double-edged sword comment. I have been in situations like that too, where I remember very specifically with my niece. This was, I laugh and I both think this was like a cruel lesson that, for my sister, but wonderful for my niece. My niece went up to my sister. She's like, can I have whatever? And then my sister was like, no. And then she just walked away, and I go, no, don't take no for an answer. Like, let me teach you. Here's how to overcome objections. And, so there's, again, sometimes as parents, we may not want to teach our kids to be persistent, because we don't want to deal with the repercussions of that if they are pushing past a no. And I get into these moments too where I say to Ocean sometimes, I'm like, when I say no, that's it. It means no. And that's usually coming from a place of me feeling overwhelmed, broken down. I'm trying to barely survive in a situation, and I'm like, no means no, and you've got to hear that. I'm trying to create a boundary. And I also know the dark side of that is he now anchors that belief, and the next time he hears no, and he walks away, and somebody else is trying to teach him that no is an opportunity to learn something and push beyond. There's so many situations like that raising kids where you want to teach that, you want to help in one area, but it hurts in another. That shows up for me. So
thanks for sharing that. I agree with you on that one. And on that same tone, one thing that I'm really striving for right now is I want all my children to have an entrepreneurial spirit and to be comfortable, to be okay with failing. And I think that's important that we teach them because, I'm kind of a perfectionist and I always want these high standards and I want to just kind of win at whatever I do. But I'm really trying right now to teach my kids, like, hey, it's okay. I would rather see you go and fail. Like, take some risk and go fail, but fail fast and fail forward, and because the greatest lessons learned, it can be from failing. And I would much rather see my kids have the courage to go out and the confidence to go out and try some of these businesses, these ideas they have, right? And not be scared to take a little bit of risk. And so, right now my son wants to create a vending machine business for cash flow, and my daughter's doing a consignment business, and they all have their own ideas, and we're trying to find enough bandwidth to help them, more on this. But all four of them have their own business ideas, and I think that's such a fun way to, again, teach your children principles around business and success and have conversations like that. I do think that I think that children learn the best through participation. It's one thing to talk about it or teach them, but to let them actually participate in the business or come to my business meetings, yes, or investor meetings and board meetings is so powerful, man. Like, they get so much from that. On that note, one more thing that I just want to share is, so I hired all of my children as employees of our family business, and not only is it a really interesting tax benefits there, and I'm not a CPA, this isn't tax advice, but you can basically pay $12,900 per year to an individual as wages, which is a tax deduction to the business. And because that's below the threshold for having to file taxes, they don't have to report that income. And so you could have 4 children and basically $50,000 a year where there's no taxes due on that. And so for me, each of my children have a job with title and responsibilities, and then they earn a salary. And it's fun to be able to have my son, come learn more about real estate and have them involved in the business with me right now. And my oldest daughter, she's going to college here next year, and so this summer I'm hiring her to. And honestly, it's not even, I don't really care too much what she's doing. It's just I just want to have her involved and have that proximity because I know it's not going to be there for very long.
In a few minutes, I want to talk about your business and how you provide for your family and what you've built. Because again, family men with businesses, we just want to put our priorities in order. And on that note, by the way, I want to go back to something that you kind of said a little bit like in passing, but I want to bookmark it because I think it's really important. You're like, I'm looking for the bandwidth to support them more, which to me was really great to hear you say, because sometimes when I look at your life, Dave, I'm like, oh, that guy's got it all together, and it just seems to be working perfectly, and he's got time for everything and everyone. And then when I hear you say something like looking for more bandwidth there, it reminds me that you also are human and may not be performing in this area as well as you want to, and you're still looking to make adjustments and grow and change and leverage yourself differently. So I just wanted to say that it was a very human thing to say, and I appreciate it.
And John, I just want to add to that. Like I want to be clear. I don't think I have everything figured out by a long shot, man. I've got so much work to do as a father, and I'm always trying to learn from other people that are doing it better. And I think we all have our own strengths in it, right? It's not like, okay, one guy's just winning, all around. It's like he's doing really well at a few things, and so I think the key is just picking up on best practice from other people, because there is no Bible on how to be a great dad. It's like it's learning as we go. And I want to give props to you, John, for the Front Row Dads. I mean, it's such an incredible community of men coming together, that are really just trying to figure it out. And to the events that I've attended in person, there's always so much authenticity and vulnerability between the group, where it's literally just, we're there just trying to show up to figure out how to win at this game of being a dad. And I don't, it really is it's hard, but it's also, I think, the most important duty that we have as men is, being able to be good fathers and role models and being able to pass down truth to our children as we see it. So I just want to be clear, I definitely don't feel like I have it all figured out. It's just me sharing a few things that, and frankly, most of these ideas are probably not my own ideas. It's just ideas that we hear from other people, right? And the key is execution, though, because knowledge is great, but the biggest competitive advantage is the implementation of knowledge.
Yeah, appreciate that. I'm glad you mentioned the retreats, because I was going to say about you that the retreats that you've attended, I also know that you walk away and share, these are my top takeaways from this retreat. So you're learning, you're summarizing, and you're helping other men with whatever it is that you're experiencing during those events. So thank you. One thing you shared actually at one of those events I'd like to talk about before we get into your business is the family foundation and how you've set that up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, so we want to make sure my children understand that giving back is really important. In my opinion, the more you give, the more you live. And so what we did is we set up a family foundation. It's actually very easy to do. There's a lot of ways to approach that. We used a DAF. It's DAF. It's a donor advised fund. Very, very simple structure. And so I had each of my children come onto the board of directors, and they each chose their own charitable cause they want to support. And so what we do is, a percentage of their income, their salary that I pay them, automatically goes into our family foundation. And it's been a really cool experience, man. My youngest, she chose to support the local animal shelter. So we walked in there, hand them some cash. They actually get to, again, participate and be really involved in that process. My son wants to help the Operation Underground Road. Sorry, he wants to help Wounded Warrior Project. And my daughter's helping Operation Underground Railroad, helping with stopping sex trafficking, and my oldest daughter wanted to help the single mothers. And for me personally, my dad has Parkinson's disease about 10 years into. He's having a really hard time with that, so I'm personally supporting the Parkinson's Foundation. But it's all very personalized, and I think it's a really fun way to be able to teach our kids about how much good money can do, right? So it's not just about, hey, go and invest in real estate and go and do these different things to get more zeros or a greater net worth. It's about impact, and how can we go and make a positive change with that resource and that tool. And so anyway, a DAF, donor advised fund, there's a lot of ways of structuring that. If any of your listeners want to reach out to me on that, I'm happy to share more details on the specifics there. Also with estate planning, having your trust set up where there's little parachute releases there as they perform, right? So they go to college with a certain GPA, or when they get married, and when they launch their own business, like seed capital, and be able to take loans against the family trust to be able to just empower them. But again, nothing's given, everything's earned, so it's all performance based. But anyway, happy to kind of dive deeper into that if anybody wanted to reach out to me personally.
That's awesome. It's a great idea. I've now seen multiple families do this. I was at an event called Gathering of Titans that's hosted up at MIT, and one of the guys there who was further along in his journey, now a grandfather, probably in his 70s, was talking about how his family gets together. Now as grown kids, he still has the fund set up, and they all get to contribute to their favorite charity. And then at Thanksgiving, they present the impact that their money had. So he goes, Thanksgiving is our family sitting around telling stories of how the family fund impacted the world. And he is just the most beautiful way to share as a family. So I just love these creative ways to bring purpose, especially when you have wealth, of how you shepherd that, how you translate that to action in the world. I really think it's beautiful.
I think it's really important because there's a lot of studies and data on how, when one generation maybe has some abundance and affluence, that next generation is usually fine, but it's that third generation that really ends up it actually hurts them because they're so soft, right? Because it's like your kids can see what you had to do to build this, and there's that proximity, but then their kids actually pay the price for it. And so, yeah, I think it is important that you have a lot of intentionality in how you structure that to avoid that type of a situation.
Agreed. Talk to us a little bit about Axia Partners. What is that? And when you are working to provide for the family and you enjoy your work too, which is great. We're not, I think as a community, we embrace that. It's wonderful to go pursue things you like to build. What's the purpose behind Axia? How does it operate? Give us a little peek behind the scenes.
Yeah, so again, love real estate. I think it's the best way to be able to create true financial freedom, to be able to create generational wealth, to be able to create that time freedom, lifestyle freedom. And so I've been really passionate about it. And, it's been really fun now for me to be able to bring in, I have, 300-400 friends that are investors with me now. And, all of my investors are my friends. It's my social network. I've never paid for a lead or an advertisement. And so to be able to create value for my friends, people I care about coming in to create passive income and really remove those barriers of entry coming into commercial real estate. And so, I was doing my own syndication, my own projects, and then syndicating money into the bigger projects. And then I fell in love with the fund model because, it just diversifies so much, it mitigates so much risk through diversification. In a fund, we have multiple assets in there, and, personally, in our Axia Partners fund, we just focus on recession-resilient real estate. And so we do multifamily apartment complexes, self-storage, and industrial warehouse, like Amazon Flex warehouse space. So those are three very recession-resilient industries or asset classes. And so in a fund, an investor is able to come in and then have direct exposure to all three of those asset classes with one investment. And so, I just had a lot of friends and people that were earning, a lot of money, but didn't really know how to responsibly deploy that capital and to make it grow for them. And so it's something I've been really studying and personally doing for, a decade. And so I just want to be able to create value for a lot of my friends. My all-time favorite quote in business is by Zig Ziglar. And he says, "You can have everything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want." And that's really kind of a motto for me throughout my life. My personal mission statement in business right now is I want to create direct value for at least 10 million people, and I want to help at least 1,000 people become financially independent through passive income real estate. And so a fund is really a way to be able to create value at scale, not only for me and my family, but for my friends and for the communities that we invest in. And so it's been really fun, man. Really proud of it. We launched it about 2.5 years ago. We're on our third offering right now. We have over $100 million in the investment firm, and just really focused on growing this business. And I'd love to have thousands of investors involved with us in the future. And but yeah, that's kind of the main goal of it, has just been to bring in a lot of people. One more thing. If you go to our website, axiapartners.com, the main homepage says experiential investing. And you mentioned it previously. I love experiences, and I really do feel like experiences are the new economy. It's a great way to be able to kind of get a unique value proposition in a crowded market. And so with experiences being the new economy, like everything that I'm doing is so experiential, right? On a personal level, in the restaurants, Topgolf's very experiential. But then in the investment firm, usually investment firms are pretty bland. There's not really anything fun about it. And so what we're doing to differentiate ourselves is every month we do an experiential webinar where we show, exactly how we do what we do. We have the top guys coming in and just teaching for an hour. We send out, swag to our partners. We really just pull back the curtain. We show our partners how we do what we do, which has been really fun, because what I've realized is a lot of guys want to be doing big commercial real estate. They just don't know how to do it. Like they lack the confidence and or the competence to do it on their own. And so if we can not only protect their investment, give them a good return on investment, but then also give them a return on education and experience, that's been really, really fun for us. And last thing I'd say there is, because when I went from this leadership career after 15 years into real estate, I'm in my office looking at spreadsheets and numbers, and I like that stuff, but I really miss the human side of it, right? That interpersonal development and the human side of it. And so the challenge was, hey, how can I humanize, and bring that back into that experiential side of it into real estate. And that's what led me to coining this term experiential investing.
Very cool. Dave, if somebody's listening, and I know that we got different guys out there, some very savvy in the real estate space, done very well, financially free, We've also got guys who've done nothing in the real estate space, but have heard about it, are interested, and of course, anywhere in between those two extremes. If you could, answer this question, this may be impossible. You tell me. What would your advice be for somebody? They're like, I'm interested in real estate at 3 levels. What would you tell a guy who's got 10 grand that he wants to play with? What would you tell a guy that's got 100 grand that he wants to play with? And what would you tell a guy that's got $1 million that he wants to play with? If they were all taking their next step in real estate or a step in real estate, what might their lead domino be, their next step, their next book, their next move?
Man, such a good question. What I'm going to say is, I'm going to back up a little bit and just say that anytime that I look at investing, it's all about it's about intentionality. So it's starting with the end and reverse engineering into what is the right approach and the right fit. And so, so for me, it goes back to that lifestyle design, right? Like, what are you really trying to accomplish? Because there's so many ways to approach real estate. You know, do you want to be passive so you can continue to grow your business, or maybe your highest and best use of your time is focusing on your current income source, or launching a new business, or expanding your own business, or do you want to be completely active where you're in it, you're doing property management? So there's so many variables there, and so I think the biggest answer is really focus on what you really want to accomplish with your investments. I also want to say, I see so many of my friends, man, where they used to invest based on FOMO, or fear of missing out, or FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt, and it's very emotional. And so for me, one of my goals is to never invest with emotion. I love the expression that says, the higher the emotion, the lower the intelligence. Again, the higher the emotion, the lower the intelligence. And so you really want to take emotion out of it and operate with intentionality. So that's the first thing I want to say. Second thing I would say is, the very best investment you can make is in the 6 inches of real estate between your ears. That will pay you the biggest dividends no matter what. So whether that's, attending conferences, buying audiobooks, joining real estate masterminds, having a real estate strategist, like my coach, my real estate coach. I mean, I won't tell you how. It's like $29 a minute is his rate. He's probably one of the best in the country, right? But having that kind of proximity to people, and sometimes you do have to pay for proximity, but just be around. So the second thing was to invest in that 6 inches of real estate, and whether that's a monetary investment or just investing your time to have the proximity around those people that are doing those big things. The next thing I would say is, we live in the most amazing age where everything is available at the tip of our fingertips, right? With ChatGPT, AI, Google, like, you can literally learn everything and access pretty much everything you need to know about how to do this. And so it's not rocket science. It's really just being coachable, being humble enough to be able to, to go out and pursue this as a student of the game. And then, the next thing I would say is, and this is a little biased here, maybe, but I think it's really important that whatever you do invest in when you're getting started is that you're actually going to learn from that investment, right? And you're not just a spectator, you're a participant in it. And so with Axia, again, a little shameless plug here, but with us, it's so we not only get the investment and the exposure to the commercial real estate, but there's that return on education. And I think that's really, really important. Basically with Axia, we structured it as it's like a free real estate mastermind for our partners exclusively. And so I think that's really important, though, whether it's with us or somebody else, but like, look for opportunities where you can learn about how to do what they do along the way. So I think that's probably my answer. So if you have 1,000, definitely just invest in yourself and in books and whatnot. If you have $100,000, still invest in yourself, join a mastermind, do some of those things, and then maybe get a few, invest into a few syndications or a fund where you can get some of that exposure. If you have $1 million, I'd probably diversify a little bit. I'd probably buy a fourplex. It's about $250,000 down payment. Invest in a fund where you can learn, and then invest in a mastermind or something where you can be around a lot of.
Dave, thank you, brother, for taking some time. Thanks for taking a walk back through your life today. Thanks for talking about your family and opening up there, and also giving us a little look at Axia and how you're funding all these adventures.
thought about this, and going back to your question on how would you approach your real estate journey, this has actually been so powerful for me. When I was 30 years old, I sat down on a Sunday, and I'll wrap up with this, but I sat down on a Sunday and I spent 4 hours. And I'm like, okay, I've been talking about creating this, financial freedom for so long. But there's a big difference between wanting something and being committed to it. So I'm like, I'm going to commit to this. And I spent 4 hours, and I wrote it all down. I call it the financial freedom equation. And it's simply saying, okay, what's my cost of living, my ideal cost of living for my family? Like, how much do I need to spend per year or have per year to support this quality of life? And then you just figure out from there, what's my current passive income? And if it's zero, it's zero, and then the next question is, or line item on a spreadsheet is, well, okay, so I need this much more passive income to create true financial freedom. And then how many years am I committed to this? And so for me, let's say it was a $250,000 of passive income. And so I gave myself 10 years to achieve that goal. And so in order to hit that number, I need to have 40 rental properties. And so it was all on a spreadsheet. And so my motto, or my mantra became 40 by 40. So I need to have 40 rental properties by age 40. Again, this is when I was 30 years old. So I had 10 years to go and achieve this. And I changed my passwords and my screensaver. Everything was 40 by 40. And that level of detail was so motivating for me, man. I sat down every Sunday and I measured where I'm at compared to where I need to be at. And I think writing it down there's real power. Supposedly you're 43% more likely to hit a goal if it's in writing. I don't know how they quantify that exactly, but for me, writing it down made it so that I held myself accountable. But more importantly is I saw the incremental improvements, which was highly motivating for me. And so that's my advice for you guys. Hit that goal when I was 36, and then I was like, okay, that was fun. And what's next? And it was to have ownership in 1,000 doors by age 40. Wrote that down. Same thing, reverse engineer the process. Hit that when I was 40, and then that's when I went over into the fun world. But my main point there was just having that clear blueprint in writing and tying intentionality to it. So it's not just, hey, I want to make this money. It's, hey, I want this money so that I can have freedom, quality of life, time with my family, pay for an amazing honeymoon for my and wedding for my kids. So I can so I can spend the money on my health to be able to be snowboarding with my kids when I'm 80, 90 years old, right? It's the more purpose I think you can tie to financial goals, it just comes so much not only easier, but it's so much more fun and fulfilling because there's purpose behind why we're working so hard towards our goal.
And Dave, if I can, how has Front Row Dads impacted you? How helpful has it been in your journey to be surrounded by these men, to be part of this community?
Extremely. I mean, there's nothing like it. I'd never been in a mastermind until about 3 years ago, and now I'm in 7 of them. But there's nothing. It's just very unique, man. There's nothing like it where the focus is on just how to be a better dad and how to up level ourselves. And there's some incredible people in there, and it's always humbling for me because I always feel like I kind of got some things going right. I go into those rooms, I'm like, man, I could be doing so much more and so much better. And I also, I want to give a little shout out to my wife. Every time I leave those events, I always feel very grateful for my wife and how much she does to support our family and really to support me in my businesses, because I'm only able to do that because I know that she's, the foundation. She's my ride or die, and she's got everything covered here on the home front, so I can go win in the business. I always come back just like reminded of how grateful I am for her doing such a good job on that side of it. But John, again, man, I think it's been very valuable, and I've referred a lot of my friends over as well. And if anybody listening to this, it's not a member, I would definitely recommend checking it out.
And last words, anything you want to share, man, that we didn't get a chance to talk about today on any subject, but you've got all the Front Row Dads dialed in here. Anything you want to say that didn't get said? Oh
man, I wasn't ready for that one. Let's see. You know what?
And it's okay if we're done.
No, I've got 10 more things to share, but I'm gonna do one.
Lead domino.
What I would say is, I've thought a lot about just how I want to live life with no regrets, and I've thought a lot about it because, again, my dad has Parkinson's, right, and it's a really tough chronic degenerative disease, and then my mom I actually lost her totally unexpectedly about 4 years ago, and that really kind of rocked me because I always say I have no regrets in my life, and that's true with one exception, in that I wish I could just tell my mom, hey, I know you did the best that you knew how to do, and I always kind of held on to that a little bit. I never had a chance to clear that up with her and express gratitude for and now as a dad, I know how hard it is being a parent, right? And so I wish I could have done that. And so the two things I'd say is, if you, with your parents, like, make sure you're good with your parents. If they're still here, you only get two of them. And so get good with them and tell them how much you love them, how much you appreciate them, how grateful you are for them, because I really think that generally our parents do the best that they know how to do, and then as I look at living life with no regrets, I think that at the end of the day, I know when I am on my deathbed, I look back in retrospect, there's going to be three things that really matter the most, and that is, in my opinion, it's the relationships, it's the memories and the experiences that I was able to accumulate. And so I think that the sooner we can realize that, and then we can actually operate in our personal lives, in our social lives, in our business lives around that understanding, I think that's going to create a higher quality of life, and again, a life well lived.
Dave, thanks, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate this conversation, and look forward to hanging with you in person at our next retreat.